Hi everyone, John here with a new video for you. When I published my May Indie Roundup, I thought I had a pretty good handle on what was coming out this month, but the games just keep on coming. There have been loads of noteworthy indie games coming out week on week and sometimes day on day, and I've been playing some of them, so in this video I'm going to run through some impressions of Arctic Eggs, the Rogue Prince of Persia, the much anticipated Hauntii which is out now, and Dungeons of Hinterberg which got an unexpected demo on Steam. So lots to talk about in this video. Likes are appreciated, you can always sub to the channel for more like this. Let me know about indie games that you've been playing in the comments and I'll tell you about the channel's Patreon at the end. So I'm going to start with a weird one. Arctic Eggs is a game developed by the Water Museum, a solo developer. Thanks very much to them for providing a code for the game. It released on Steam on May 16th, and it's a very strange little indie game, in a way that I think a lot of people will like actually. You have to explore what seems to be an oil rig in the far north, rendered in low poly shapes with crunchy textures. There are people standing around, shivering, chatting, dancing, or queuing, and they say weird things about how their toilets have been whispering to them, or how they're making a time-lapse of rotting meat in their apartment. Just very surreal dialogue. And the dialogue appears typed on screen, complete with typos that get corrected, or not, as the characters are speaking. These people are weird, cold, and hungry, and you have to feed them. This involves a frying pan physics game. You have to fry those titular Arctic eggs, and you have to move the pan around to create heat, and then flip them when one side is done, hopefully without sending them flying off into the void, which happens pretty regularly to be honest. When that happens you have to start again, and the game quickly introduces wrinkles to make cooking more complicated, like having to fry several eggs with a cigarette in the pan before the cigarette goes out, or trying to flip around rashers of bacon, eggs, and links of sausages that are all cooking at different rates. It's pleasingly messy and slapstick, and I think the weird aesthetic and the writing work a lot in creating a distinctive atmosphere here, so hop onto Steam and get ready to fry some Arctic Eggs. Prince of Persia games like London buses, you wait for 14 years and then 2 come along at once. This month we got the Rogue Prince of Persia, developed by Evil Empire, the makers of Dead Cells. It's an interesting choice for them to make a Prince of Persia game, but maybe after all those Dead Cells DLC they were ready for something new, and I guess it can't hurt to hitch your wagon to Ubisoft when times are tough. The Rogue follows swiftly on the heels of The Lost Crown, which was an accomplished but a little bit uninspired Metroidvania, I thought. This one's a slick roguelike where the prince gets stuck in a time loop whilst trying to repel an invasion from the Huns. So each time you die, you return to the start of the loop and try again. There are some quality of life roguelite perks that carry over, like unlocking new choices of route to avoid playing the same opening section interminably, and weapon blueprints that you can make at the forge and things like that. But the focus here is of course combat, and it's really fast and snappy. You get the traditional moveset of jump, dash, strike, and ranged attacks, but the highlight here is wall running, just like in the other Prince of Persia games. If you jump near a background wall, you can hold the trigger and the prince will start to run a short way across the wall. It's a perfect 2D version of that signature move from Sands of Time. I enjoyed a couple of hours with this one. I found it a little bit hard to be honest. You get one healing potion and you die in 3 or 4 hits, which means you have to be near perfect in combat to progress. But even as a bit of a sloppy player, I did manage to unlock some secrets, blueprints, weapons, and different areas, so I'll keep tinkering with this one and try and concentrate more, I guess. That's the Rogue Prince of Persia. The next game is a bit of a preview. We got a taste of Dungeons of Hinterberg in May as well. We've seen some of this one in showcases. I remembered the eye-catching, line-drawn, illustrated visuals, and it was having a closed playtest period that opened up to anyone who wanted to try it on Steam and then ran for a couple of weeks in May, so I applied and hopped in to try it. And the visual style really does live up to the promise. It's bright, it's crisp, and it has a kind of Mobius meets Studio Ghibli kind of vibe. It looks super fresh and it's nicely animated, but the animation doesn't get in the way of the action, which is super important for a game like this, because you are going to be spending a lot of time dungeon crawling. The story here is that you're a lawyer from the big city who's gone on holiday to a resort town where magic is real. Tourists flock to Hinterberg in droves to live out their fantasy of crawling dungeons with magic spells and beating monsters and getting into the action and finding treasure and all of that kind of stuff. You're being taken through the basics on a guided tour when a giant earthquake occurs, so something weird is going on as you arrive. You wake up back in the cozy town of Hinterberg, which is going to act as your hub. There are weapon stores and NPCs to talk to, and you can take rail cars up to the other areas. Once you're up in the mountains, you can talk to people, learn spells, explore, and engage in the dungeon combat. I found the combat to be basic but fine, and there are puzzles dotted through the dungeons as well. You'll also pick up different weapons and currencies and that kind of thing. At the end of every dungeon you get a stamp in your book which helps you to open new ones. I found this game to be slick, well presented, and easygoing, a nice mix of story, exploration, and combat. Seems like a winner. The demo's gone offline now, but you can play it on Steam or via Game Pass when Dungeons of Hinterberg comes out on July the 18th. The final game that I have for you today is Hauntii. It's a game that I've been really looking forward to, having played the demo and previewed it in a couple of videos. But now it's finally here. I started it again and quickly got to where the demo left off, and I've played a couple of hours of it now, and I really like this game. It's a nice combination of monochrome art, lovely music, and tight, varied gameplay. It's really won me over, and I love especially how much is packed into this game, especially when it comes to the haunting mechanic. This is where you can jump into objects and move them around, whether it's collapsing an obelisk onto a group of enemies to destroy them, or even jumping into different animals like bugs and elephants and hopping Mad Hatter looking guys. You even use it in boss fights, with boss fights built around this haunting mechanic where you have to haunt bells to ring them, to take down the shields and then take out the enemy and that kind of thing. And I really like the variety here. I love that you can hop into insects to do different kinds of traversal, like climbing up trees and floating across space to find collectibles. The elephants that you can occupy move slowly and shoot projectiles from their trunks, which is perfect for clearing out large areas of enemies. And I just like that all of these haunting opportunities are kind of scattered around the landscape, so it's not like you have to carry out a task and you see the thing you need to haunt. They're actually just kind of everywhere, which gives you room for creativity and personal preference and just trying stuff out. The story is also fine. It's enough to draw you onwards. You're a soul who has freshly arrived in the underworld, but there is this glowing figure who haunts you from above and tries to draw you outwards, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make it happen. I do have a couple of little niggles with this one. I think the map is a bit weird. I think that when you are floating in the air, the perspective acts a bit strange on the eye and you can't quite tell where you're headed. There's also a gating system where you have to collect a certain amount of tokens to progress, a little bit like in a Mario game. You get these tokens from completing little challenges that are scattered around the landscape, like a little time trial where you're racing through little stars that disappear, or climbing up to the top of a very tall tree, or navigating to a strange place, or wiping out a bunch of enemies. And at first they seemed like optional challenges, and I really liked them that way. But now that the game is progressing, they're not optional. You have to seek them out and do them in order to unlock the way forward. This is starting to introduce elements of backtracking and map clearing that I perhaps would have liked to avoid in this game. But I have to say that all in all, I've had a good time with it. It's out on Steam and all the consoles, including Day 1 Game Pass. That's Hauntii. So thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. May is almost over now, and I honestly think that this month is going to go down in the history books for how many indie games came out. I had another video called "Is this the best ever month for indie games?" and I will link to that here. Click through if you'd like to check it out. Your likes are appreciated. Let me know about what indie games you're playing in the comments. You can always sub to the channel for more like this, and I would like to say a big thank you to the channel's patrons, including new patrons Ian and Slater the Cultivator, and Mike, who upped their pledge to the top tier, so thanks very much to Mike as well. If you're interested in getting bonus content, behind the scenes blog posts, extra podcasts about music and life in general and travel, as well as an invite to the patron-only Discord, then head over to patreon.com/gaminginthewild. I will link it here and in the comments. Big thank you to all my existing patrons, and a big thank you to you if that's something that you're interested in. That's it for this video, so take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you on the next one.